What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Gaming, your monthly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. My name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys so much for returning each and every week to the show. Hope you're subscribing there on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or YouTube or one of the many platforms that are available for the podcast. If you are, I really, really do appreciate it. This week on the show, we have our guest. His name is CRCalkos. Met this man on Twitter. I actually reached out to him, noticed he was a follower of the show, but he was not a guest. So I reached out to him and asked if he wanted to be on the show, and he was very nice enough to share his time with me and discuss his history with gaming. If you guys want to be on the show just like he was, send me a tweet at MitchPower1116 or at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast. I do want to apologize ahead of time. I attempted to do some audio stuff to try to make the podcast sound better and apparently deleted the file and corrupted it. So right now you're getting the Skype audio for the call. Not saying it's bad, but it's not as good as it could be. So I do 100% apologize for the technical issue, but the episode is there in full. It just sound quality isn't as there. So I do apologize for that. But without further ado, let's get things started with CRCalkos. Do you remember what initially got you started playing games? Was it a family member? Was it a friend? Was it some kiosk you saw at a store? Like, what got you started?
What initially got me started, I've been interested and fascinated by video games for about as long as I remember. I think by the time I could walk, I was interested in the medium. My first memories, because I don't know which one came first, was I was at a demo kiosk at a store, and I remember playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I think I was maybe 3 years old at the time. And at the time my knowledge, of course, was so primitive as a toddler that I didn't know how to move. I couldn't actually get the character to move to the right. I had a hard time with that. So I distinctly remember Sonic, ba-boom, and then I just walked away with my parents because they were just like, oh, you died. So my other memory, and the one that's a lot more founded, was still a toddler. I think I was around 4 years old at the time. And I was visiting my aunt and uncle upstate. And my aunt has been, a gamer since she was since video games were around. I think she had a Magnavox Odyssey growing up. She spent that with her own money. And I played Tetris on her PC for the first time, and followed immediately by Doom.
Nice.
When I was 4. So
I mean, that builds character. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely builds character. I watched her play. I played it myself on her old computer. And then after that as well, my dad let me watch him play Duke Nukem, and my mom was not too happy about that.
See, I'd be way like, as a parent, I'd be way more pissed if I saw a kid playing Duke Nukem over Doom. I'd be like, Jesus, look at this.
It was weird. Like, I have these memories of kids watching my parents play games, but for the longest time, I actually didn't have a console. The only source of gaming that I have at the home was an old family computer that I used to play the old Humongous Entertainment point and click games. I think I had the equivalent of all of them.
Right.
I didn't actually had all of them, but if I was at the schoolyard, it's like, oh yeah, I got all of that crap.
Of course, yeah, because when you're, man, schoolyard, you talk some big shit, bro. You're like, yo, man, I got all of them. I got every one of them. My uncle works with Nintendo, and I have every game on the planet.
So my knowledge of gaming was very limited by what I could see on TV and such, because I just didn't have a console. For example, I played the Sonic games on the PC. Sonic 1, 2, 3, 3D Blast, they were all ported to the PC. So not a lot of people know this, but my first introduction to proper gaming by the time that I was cognizant enough to actually play games was playing Sonic games on the goddamn PC. In fact, the first game that I remember actually beating, getting to the end screen, seeing the credits roll, is Sonic 3D Blast. Other than the Humongous Entertainment games, which, are designed to be beaten. So, but yeah.
Did those come out like the same? They didn't come out like day and date with the Genesis games. Like, did they come out later on?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I remember playing 3D Blast while I was watching commercials on television. The PC version even had its own box art, I think. I had
no clue that they even came out on PC. Like,
they absolutely did.
Yeah, so it definitely. Yeah, well, I mean, Sonic 3D Blast is on PC. Obviously, it's on PC now, but I was just like, release date November '96.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's insane. I had no fucking clue, man. Let me hold on. So Sonic 3D Blast was released November 96. Saturn version, okay. Nobody gives a shit about the Saturn version. The game's launch coincided with the release of similarly to, that's Game Gear. No. Oh yeah, here we go. A port of the Sega Saturn version was released in Windows in 97. So, I mean, roughly around the same time. So it wasn't like 5 years later or whatever, but that's nuts, dude. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had no clue that game came out on PC. Like I was very much not in the PC realm of stuff. I can say that. Like we didn't have a computer like that growing up, so like I didn't do a lot of the games. I remember going to my uncle's house. He had a PC and we were playing like fucking Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark in like a point and click, style game. He had missed. He had stuff like that. But like, yeah, I didn't even know that the Sonic games were available on PC. That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, it's like when you tell people that Final Fantasies 7, 8, and 9 were all quickly ported to the PC not long after their PlayStation release. It's like, yeah, I remember watching my friend play Final Fantasy 8 back in 1999 on his computer.
That's nuts.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people don't know. It was like that for a long time, and what happened is that I wanted a Game Boy Color because I wanted to be able to play games in the car. So I actually saved money by picking up cans and bottles on the street until I saved up roughly $120 so I could buy the Game Boy Color along with the game for it. And I got Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, which was the very first non-PC game that I ever owned. So after that, it was, for a long time, it was just Game Boy Color, and then the Game Boy Advance came out, so I saved up to get that. But what happened is whenever me and my brother got good grades on our report cards, we would rent a console. We would rent either a PlayStation or a Nintendo 64 from a local video store. But the other thing is, before I actually started getting consoles, my dad is a software engineer. And so that's why our PC was always fairly
like, awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't built for gaming, but it was reliable. So
sure.
We actually emulated N64 games. So they didn't run very well. Most of the time they ran at less than 20 frames per second, but the very first time I beat Super Mario 64 was when I was 9 years old at 15 frames per second using a keyboard.
That sounds horrible. Like, that sounds, I mean, yes, you had like experience to play it, but like, number one, analog stick for that game would, in my opinion, be crucial, because again, it was like like literally that game made the analog stick right. Like that game right there, like that little stick, like as soon as you saw Mario on screen and you were messing with this N64 controller, you were like, this is perfect. Like, this makes complete sense. And then to play it, and I mean, also it was probably 30 frames a second or whatever, just, but dude, so like sub 20 frames a second, no analog stick. I mean, good for you, dude. That's pretty awesome. Like, I just can't imagine, but I mean, like, did you ever go to a buddy's house like later and play it on? No, well, you said you rented consoles. Did you ever check it out later in life and go, "Oh, damn, it runs a little bit better on 64, and also the analog stick's nice"? Did you ever like check that out later?
I never noticed the difference. I was just happy to be able to play it at the time. The only time I really noticed was because we also emulated Mario Kart 64, so I played that a lot. And again, at a slower frame rate, the audio would slow down, the game was slower. Like it was awful, but I loved it. I played it for hours and hours and hours. It wasn't until we went to Best Buy and saw a demo, like a demo video of Mario Kart 64, being like, play it on this awesome TV.
And you were like, wait a minute.
Well, no, my dad pointed it out. Like, yeah, that's fast. Like, that's running properly.
Right.
That's when I noticed the difference. And I don't know why he said that, because that spurned on my desire to get an N64. So I think he made a huge mistake there.
I would have done everything to fucking censor you from every real like gameplay of a 64. I would be like, no. That's not how they play. This is how they play on the computer. This is how all the systems play. I would have avoided showing you any sort of like realistic viewpoint of an N64. Being like, this is how it actually looks. Here's how fast it actually plays. I would have avoided all of that, like the plague. I'd be like, no. We're fine with what we got. We're good.
Right. Well, my parents eventually had to give in because I was very passionate about it and I just needed more and more and more. So eventually they got in late 2002 they got me a subscription to Nintendo Power because I had saved up to get a Game Boy Advance, but I didn't really know what to buy for the handheld. So they got me Nintendo Power, so I knew, oh, RPGs, I got to get Golden Sun, I got to get Tactics Ogre, and okay, now I got to get Metroid Fusion because apparently that's the big return for this series. I don't know anything about this. What the hell is Metroid Prime? What the hell?
That was the question I was going to ask. So, like, you obviously started in the Genesis and Super Nintendo era, so 16-bit era is when you started. Did you ever? I mean, you had already mentioned you had emulation of N64. Did you ever go back and emulate any like original NES games or anything like that, or go back and play the console ever?
Oh, yeah, actually, no, I did have a NES emulator, so I was playing Super Mario Bros. 3 a lot as a kid. And again, that emulator didn't work very well. There were lots of graphical glitches because it was early emulation technology. So I did play that. Because I did play my aunt's NES playing Super Mario Bros. 3. She actually taught me how the card game worked. So I was able, at the time I memorized the pattern, so I was able to get everything I needed. What happened was, like, I had all this fascination, and eventually the video store stopped renting out consoles. It's
fucking crazy they did to begin with, if you think about it. Like, that's...
Of course.
That's crazy. Like, here you go, person. Here's a $200 console at the time. Rent it for a weekend? Okay. I mean, it's just... I mean, I get, like, borrowing a buddy's Game Boy, for, like, a weekend. Like, hey, dude, can I borrow your Game Boy for the weekend? Sure, here you go. Handheld, all compact. This is it. No, it's like, take this home, plug it in, hook it up to the TV. Like, it's just like a crazy concept. My family, I remember like asking, can I rent a Super Nintendo? And they looked at me like, man, get the fuck out of here. You already got a Genesis. Yeah. You got this. You're fine.
So up until I was 12 years old, most of my experience playing video games was going to friends' houses or going to a family member's house that happened to have the console or something like that, or the games that I happen to have on my computer. And some of them, like Age of Empires, Roller Coaster Tycoon, things like that. StarCraft was a big one. But it was very limited because I didn't have the magazines. I didn't have access to the things. So a lot of gaming history I was super ignorant to for a long time until I got Nintendo Power and learned about the history of the Metroid franchise. And I learned about all of the games that I should be getting and all of these other things. And in February, it was winter break. We couldn't rent a console. So my parents balked and got me a GameCube.
Nice.
Me and my brother. So, because we were big into Nintendo at the time. And we knew what games we wanted as well, because the November issue of Nintendo Power, or it was like the October-November, had a big disc of of all the games and trailers that were released for E3 that year.
Nice.
So we knew that we wanted Metroid Prime. We knew we wanted Mario Party 4. We knew we wanted Animal Crossing. We knew we wanted Star Fox Adventures. We wanted all of these games because Nintendo was telling us.
Star Fox Adventures, though. Nobody wanted that game.
Actually, my brother and I beat it multiple times.
Was that your first Star Fox game?
Yes.
Okay, so like that's the only thing, because like everybody who had played a Star Fox game before you played that was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this isn't like a Star Fox game.
Star Fox Adventures was my first foray into furry degeneracy. So like Crystal was my first.
Dude, yeah, like that game, I remember I used to work in a video game store, and so many people would play they'd played Star Fox in the past, so like they'd be like Star Fox Adventure, and they'd be like, the fuck is that game, man? Like, they come back like later, like, what was that? That wasn't a Star Fox game. And then you later find out, like, apparently that was a game that was like originally not a Star Fox game, and it was developed and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they just was like slap Star Fox license on it, and that's what they did. Like, that's exactly how Nintendo treated that game. It was not a fucking Star Fox game at all. And then later they were just like, I don't know if they were worried about sales or something, if they were just like, fuck it, put Star Fox in it, we got to get this thing sold. I don't know.
I don't know, man, but my brother and I played it and beat it multiple times. In retrospect, obviously the game is total trash, and is the first step in marking the decline of Rare. But at the time, we loved it. We didn't really have much context. However, the shining jewel, the game that I really wanted for the GameCube was Metroid Prime. The game's flaws are a lot more visible now than they were then, but I still love it. It was atmospheric and immersive in a way that I hadn't experienced before. Mario Party 4 prompted my parents to get us 2 more controllers, so we had a total of 4 for our friends. We also had Super Mario Sunshine, which I really enjoyed. I don't enjoy it as much now because I can basically beat Super Mario 64 in a couple of hours. So I like that game a lot more, but I loved Super Mario Sunshine. A couple of months later, we ended up getting our hands on Smash Melee, played that extensively. In fact, that was like the one game that as the GameCube went on, we kept returning to. Because eventually I stopped returning to Prime, I stopped returning to Sunshine, but we always returned to Melee, which kind of makes sense. That's the console's shining jewel. What happened then is in 2003, it was actually New Year's Day. We had just left the theater we were going on our way to go to see Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. My dad was very much into the franchise, and actually it's something that our family watches every year now. But on the way, we ended up getting a PlayStation 2 with Dance Dance Revolution because that's what my mom wanted. My mom wanted to lose weight by playing Dance Dance Revolution because she saw it in the arcade.
And of course, you weren't going to argue that. You were like, yeah, Mom, you need to lose weight. No, I'm just playing. Don't do that. That's probably a really bad idea. You're like, yeah, Mom, we need that. You need to lose weight. God, yeah, let's get that. Let's for sure. No,
I ended up getting obsessed with DDR for a couple of years.
Oh, dude, I got obsessed with DDR for a fucking summer. I went to like every graduation party I went to of my buddies. It was there. And it sounds so bad, but I remember like playing it. And I was like, holy shit, this game is really fun. And then my buddy's like, well, I'm going to so-and-so's party and I'm bringing it then. I'm like, I remember going to a party. I didn't even know who they were. I was like, I don't care. You're bringing DDR to that party. I'm going to be there. I don't care who the fuck it is. But yeah, like for a whole summer, I was obsessed.
But the PS2 was actually my first foray outside of Nintendo because eventually we were able to get games on the PlayStation 2 that weren't DDR. Eventually my mom said it was a DDR exclusive machine. So if she saw a DDR game for the PlayStation 2 at the store, she'd be like, okay, mine. Right. She ended up buying us really good pads as well. Eventually,
that's what I was going to ask next. Did you have the bullshit pads that came with it, or did you actually end up getting like solid pads for it?
We ended up getting solid metal pads.
Nice. Dude, those metal pads were like the envy of everybody who played DVR. Like if you were like, because I remember, of course, there was like levels of the DDR pad, right? There was the bullshit one that came with it that was like a millimeter thick and would like shift all over the place. There was like the mid-tier one, which was like a super thicker, like regular pad, like it was a fabric pad, but it was super thick, heavier, wouldn't really move around. And then you had your hardcore metal pad, like the ones at the arcade. And like, I remember just like when I first got into it, seeing the metal ones, I was like, oh my God. I didn't even play DDR in the arcades for like years after the PlayStation versions. Like I didn't even realize like how big, because I didn't go to arcades much. I go, I'm like, oh, they have DDR here. Then I later find out like this thing was a fucking arcade craze way before it was on PlayStation. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. So actually, we graduated through those levels. We didn't start with metal pads. We started with the crap. I complained about it. My mom was like, okay, we'll get the thick one because, again, this was the one and only time probably that she encouraged my video game habit because I was in the best shape of my life as a young teenager.
Right.
Like, I was in such good shape.
Your cardio was on fire, bro. You were just a machine.
Yeah, and my mom was impressed. I'm just like, oh, okay, Paranoia 200 on Expert. All right. So my mom would watch that and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So she was more than welcome to support that. But with the PlayStation 2, eventually we did get more games for it. I don't remember exactly what we have because the PlayStation 2 is more of a footnote for me. I do remember playing God of War on it. That was my very first third-person action game because I didn't know what Devil May Cry was at the time. Now I do, for sure.
Right.
I didn't experience Ratchet and Clank. I didn't experience the later half of the Tony Hawk games. I didn't experience a lot of what the PlayStation 2 had to offer, like the JRPGs on it, and other things like that. So from there, the next console for me, being the Nintendo nerd that I was growing up, was the Wii.
Sad
Christmas,
face.
sad face. Christmas 2006, I got the Wii, and I got Wii Sports, and I got Red Steel, and those are my first games for the Wii, because I didn't get my copy of Twilight Princess for 2 weeks after I got my Wii. So I experienced the Wii. My only foray outside of Wii Sports was Red fucking Steel. Again! I get shafted, and I don't care. I beat Red Steel twice.
I think when you get to a certain, it's like the worst part is, I think, was with new console launches, is the fact that you don't, I mean, you are blind to bullshit, because if a console launches and you get it that launch day or week or year or whatever, you're just so excited for a new console that you put up with bullshit games. And unfortunately, some consoles launch with amazing games, like Twilight Princess. I don't give a fuck who you are. Twilight Princess is a good game. Like, you could talk shit about it, whatever. It's a good game. And it came out the day the system came out for the Wii, which is fucking crazy. Because, sometimes we get console launches that come out with, games like Killzone Shadowfall. Anyways, you had a good game. But also, there's a bunch of trash that comes out on games systems when they launch. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, you had to deal with the trash first, and then you got the good shit.
Yeah. So with Twilight Princess, though, it's like at that point you're comparing good with great, and people always have their preferences because each Zelda game has the own feeling or emotion that they're trying to convey. So a lot of the people that really enjoyed the whimsical, charming, sailing-esque adventure of Wind Waker were not that excited about Twilight Princess after it came out. Of course, before you're always excited, but after it came out, but of course the Zelda cycle is a thing, and they only just recently broke it with Breath of the Wild. But right. Zelda as a series reviews very well because it feels built for critics and the way that they play games. So everybody has their preference as far as Zelda games, and as far as I'm concerned, they're all good.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to run across too many bad Zelda games. I mean, obviously everybody has their own preference, which I don't want to say it's only preference based off of like what you played at a certain age. Like I don't want to say that because, for example, like my son loves Breath of the Wild. He fucking loves that game. He has 600 hours or something in it. Like he plays the shit out of it. And I mean, there's times where I see him play it and I'm like, haven't you done everything already? Like, haven't you done every dungeon and haven't you done everything in this game? And he's like, no, I haven't. I've just, he fucks around and he like just has a lot of fun with it. And I don't want to say that's going to be his favorite Zelda game, but it might be, just based off the nostalgia that he had playing it at a certain age. I never really played like many Zelda games at a younger age because I was more a Genesis PlayStation kid, right? I just didn't play a lot of the N64, Super Nintendo, Zelda, regular. And I had an NES, but like after NES, my Nintendo lineage didn't really happen to go back until after like GameCube happened. So like all these like games all these Zelda games, people talk about Link to the Past, greatest game ever. I'm like, I didn't even play it. I don't, some people say that's the best one. Ocarina of Time, I didn't really play. Like, I didn't have a 64 to play Ocarina of Time. So I played Twilight Princess, and I was more just because like I had played Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, and that was about it. That was about all the Zelda experience I had until I got to. I didn't really play Wind Waker that much. I played a little bit of it, but my GameCube machine was more like Smash. Like I fucking smashed Mario Party. That thing was like that machine right there. But like Twilight Princess, I remember playing. I'm like, dude, this is fucking awesome. This is great. And then like later down the road, people like want to scoff and be like, oh, that game wasn't good. I'm like, dude, I had a fucking blast with that game. I don't know what you're talking about. That game was great.
So as far as Zelda is concerned, my first foray into the series is actually the Oracle games, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons.
Right, on Game Boy.
Because I had the Game Boy Color. That was my system of choice at the time. And my brother and I both got copies. I had Seasons, he had Ages. So right. What happened was that we beat our respective games. We would swap, and then we would beat those games, and then we would input the passwords, and then we would do the new game plus, quote unquote. We would swap again, and then we would rebeat our games on New Game Plus, and then we would link up and play against Ganon. So that game was actually kind of cool as far as its connectivity goes. It's primitive now, but you did need to trade passwords with other people so you could actually fight Ganon. A lot of people don't know that, but there is that secret final boss if you beat the game twice using the passwords.
So question. So like, and again, forgive me because like my Game Boy machine was Pokemon. Like
Sure,
like,
yeah.
I didn't even know what other games were. I was like, can I just have every Pokemon game possible? So here's the thing. Pokemon releases 2 copies, right?
Mm-hmm.
95% of the game is identical. You know what I mean? Like it's the same thing, like same bosses, 95% of the same Pokemon, but there's the 5% of Pokemon that are exclusive to each one, so it encourages people to play. What was different? Like how different were Oracle and how different were those 2 games to make it like when you played his copy, were you like, holy shit, this is so much different than the other game I played?
They are completely different games.
That's awesome.
Different maps, different everything. They're all different.
That's great.
Yeah, so the completely different stories too. They're just kind of slightly interwoven because how it works is that it is Link in 2 alternate universes being sent to 2 different lands to solve their problems because they're both Twin Rovers trying to awaken Ganon again. But in solving those problems, Link lights the flames of wisdom and power, and in doing so awakens Ganon. So what you need to do is then you need to trade the passwords, beat the games again, and then you get to fight Ganon for the true ending.
Dude, that's so awesome. Like that's like a cool concept because it's hard to believe that Nintendo would simultaneously kind of develop 2 entirely separate games and then release them. Like if you had given, I mean, I don't know how willing they would be able to do that nowadays, like I said, Pokemon happens and even Pokemon is still 5% of a difference. Like there's really no.
You say that Nintendo developed Oracle of Ages and Seasons,
right.
But they didn't.
It wasn't. It was
Capcom.
Yes. How? By the way, good for them for just saying, "Hey, Capcom, want to make a Zelda game for us?" Like, not many people would let their IP be used by some third-party company like that. But,
well, especially since Nintendo has that thing with Philips with the CDI games, right?
Right.
Because that was still fresh in their mind at the time, right? And
right.
They were just like, "We'll outsource this to Capcom," and they did well. They also made Minish Cap as well.
Well, by the way, Minish Cap was fucking awesome. God, that game was fun. Like, again, it's just weird because like I just can't imagine a company simultaneously doing 2 different games at the same time and then releasing them together like that again today. I don't think they would allow that because just development cost now is insane. And I doubt they would be cool enough to like I said, Pokemon still happens every year where there's 2 copies of the game, but 95% of the game is the same. They just make certain Pokemon exclusive and that's really about it. But that's such a cool thing that they were that different. I never got a chance to play them, but I've never heard anything bad about them at all, like ever. So
I recommend them. They're not super stellar, but they're definitely solid Zelda games. They're definitely worth their own in their own right. They both have different gimmicks around them. Oracle of Ages obviously going back in time. The map is a lot smaller, but there's 2 of them. And then there's Oracle of Seasons where you have to change the season, so you change the terrain so you can get around. It's interesting in their own right. They also have other gimmicks. At the same time, I was playing Pokemon Silver. My brother had Pokemon Gold. So obviously the same principle of Zelda is like whichever Pokemon is your first one is always your favorite. So Gen 2 is my favorite.
Yeah, I guess the thing is like I love the Pokemon games so much. Like obviously when they first came out, I was the ripe age to like be just enthralled by it. Like I was all about everything. Like of course I was that fucking nerdy kid who's like Pokemon school folders and bed sheets and like all that shit. So I was like all about it. And I want to say, I'm trying to think of like, I fell off. I want to say it like, I was playing every one of them. Like even like getting older, getting a job. Like I didn't give a shit. I was still playing them up until I think it was like Black and White might have been the last ones that I was like all about. And then afterwards they started adding so much shit I just didn't care about. Like they started adding like, oh, you could decorate or you can like dress up your Pokemon and you can put them in. I was like, the fuck are we doing now? Like what what is this game becoming? Like I'm not trying to have like a Nintendo style like let me customize my Pokemon. No, I just want to fight people. I just want to have like good battles. I just want to have a good story. Like I didn't give a shit about doing all the other stuff they were doing. I thought it was so insane of them for doing certain things like what they did think it was Silver and Gold. Was it the time-based shit where like
Yeah, it was.
you
It had an
I
internal
was like,
clock.
yeah, I was like, that's fucking bananas. Like, holy shit, I have to like play this game at night to catch this Pokemon. And then they started doing the eggs and the breeding, and like there was a certain level that I thought like, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. And then it got to like a certain level and I was like, I don't care about any of these new features that are happening. Like then like I remember Black and White was the first one that was online, because I remember like going to the store to buy it and there was a headset there and I was like, is this online right now? Like, are we talking about Pokemon Online? Because that's like the dream come true for people.
Oh, of course, yeah, an MMO, right? An MMO.
Right. We basically, that's the dream come true. You played with fucking link cables for the longest time, and you're like, wait, I can play online now? And then, of course, we relied on Nintendo Online to work, and yeah. But like, I was so psyched, and now like my son's pretty much like, he's obsessed with them. You know what I mean? Every time a new one comes out, he's all about it. Sword and Shield, I'm optimistic about. I won't shit on it, but like I'm optimistic that they will be good games. Like I'm very hopeful that it's like it looks more return to like normal stuff, but like again, 3D Pokemon looking that good, taking it anywhere. That's what like our dream has been since Pokemon happened. So
Of course.
like that's why I'm like, dude, this looks really good. And of course, my son's nuts though. He'll play both games. Like,
oh, that's my girlfriend. My girlfriend does it.
He plays both, dude. He's like, I'm like, what do you want? He goes, I want Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I'm like, okay, which one?
Both.
And he just looks like he's like, both. I'm like, okay, you're aware they're like almost identical games, correct? Like you're aware of that. He's like, I know. I'm like, okay, bottom both, fucking kid beat both. I was like, oh, okay. That's cool. And again, now they have things like Pokemon Bank, so it's real easy to transfer shit, you know?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
just beat one, load all his shit to Pokemon Bank, and then started the second one. As soon as he got to the point where he could get his Pokemon, he's like, fuck this, give me my Blastoise that I've raised forever. And he just searched him out. I'm like, all right, dude. So I'll probably end up getting him that steel book that I saw, the double steel book of like both games, because that, again, I might pop in one, but I hope one day, I don't know, I hope they don't do this, where they tie the game to the cartridge. Obviously, no Switch game does that now. You know what I mean? You have like save data that is separate from the game. You know what I mean? There's save data on the Switch console. But before, if one person played Pokemon, that was it. It was basically their game. No two people could just share one game. You had to erase the save file to start over. I hope that's not the case now, because I'd like to be able to play it and not have to worry about erasing his stuff, because that probably wouldn't work very well.
Of course. So, like, my girlfriend is big into Pokemon. She had multiple DSs with multiple copies of the games growing up. She is completely insane. My brother is actually the same way, and it was kind of funny when I introduced my brother to my girlfriend, because my brother found out that she was interested in Pokemon, and he was just like, he would not stop, because he doesn't have anybody to talk about Pokemon with anymore. So he was very, very excited about that, which is kind of funny because I, in turn, got him into Monster Hunter, and he has twice the amount of time in that game as I do, which surprised the crap out of me when I found that out, because I have over 200 hours in World. She's also big into Animal Crossing. She's super excited for the Animal Crossing release.
Right. Dude, that made a lot of people lose their shit. I remember that announcement. People were just like, I love watching like reaction videos to like announcements like that, because you see people that are like so hyped for shit, and it's like super cool to be able to see somebody that fucking excited over something like that. It's just so awesome to see.
Right. No, I totally understand that. So as far as if we go back to 2006, so in 2006 through 2009, I should say, are my formative years. That's really where I got interested in gaming and the knowledge and the lore and reading up and all of that stuff. The lore. What the hell am I saying?
The magical lore of video games.
The lore.
No, I get what you're saying, like the industry, and you got interested in like not just cool video games, like who made this game, what, like that. I'm right there with you. I know what you're talking about.
So in late 2007, I got an Xbox 360, and I ended up getting Halo 3. I got Grand Theft Auto 4 when that came out. So Halo 3 was my game of choice for 2 years, and I think that's the longest I've.
Great.
I'm sorry?
That game was great. God damn.
Yeah. Every night, it was our routine after high school. Every single night I would play that game with my friends. So I just and also at around the same time, something very important happened. In 2008, I learned how to emulate myself. So I ended up getting ZSNES. And the reason why I did this is because I was watching Screw Attack at the time. And Screw Attack was on the up and up. And one thing that they kept telling us is that fighting games are awesome and you should play them. And my only experience at the time with fighting games was like the 3D Mortal Kombats, Soul Calibur 2 and 4, and Smash, Melee, and Brawl. That was all the context I had. And it's like, Street Fighter, what is Street Fighter? Oh, it made $5 billion in the arcades. It's no big deal.
Right.
What is Killer Instinct? Oh, it redefined what combos are.
Right.
Like, what are these games? I have no idea. So I emulated the Super Nintendo, got Killer Instinct, got the new challengers, Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, and I was playing that game on a keyboard, and then I was like, oh, this is amazing. Street Fighter 2, this is the coolest thing ever. So I found out about Street Fighter 3 from Screw Attack. I got a MAME, emulated that on my PC. And so in 2008, when Street Fighter 4 started coming out, I was super excited about that. Street Fighter 4 comes out. I get it. I buy my own arcade stick because they were finally making them. They were making them in the United States, and thus begins my 12-year history of competitive fighting games.
Holy shit. I won't say, the only fighting games I played were Mortal Kombat on Genesis. Like, I was in Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, right? Because that was the heyday of, like, those, like, that whole time frame, and fighting games were fucking huge, right? Street Fighter 2. Right. The funny thing is, like, on Genesis, I feel like Street Fighter got the shaft, because on Super Nintendo, I felt like there were like 6 more versions of Street Fighter on Super than there was Genesis. Like, and then I later find out that's not the case. It's just like, I think Capcom leaned into Super Nintendo more because like Mortal Kombat, 6 buttons, but also at the same time, well, I mean, I had the 6-button controller on Genesis, but it wasn't the standard. You're right. It was like like you had to specifically go look for the 6-button controller, but like also Mortal Kombat on Genesis was, you can say better, but it just, it had the blood. It wasn't censored. It was like a full version of it. So I think Genesis leaned more towards Mortal Kombat crowd, whereas Super Nintendo, because of that thing that was happening with the censorship in Mortal Kombat, I think people just went more Street Fighter on Super Nintendo. That's how I've always seen it. Like a lot of people that played Street Fighter were playing it more on Super, not on Genesis.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, the L and R buttons on the SNES controller were made for the specific purpose of playing Street Fighter 2.
Right. I mean,
that's the only reason why they're there.
Exactly. Like, and I mean, the 6 buttons on the Genesis controller all being in a row, there was no shoulder buttons. Like, for Mortal Kombat, it was awesome. Like, it was great. Like, it worked well for Mortal Kombat. But at the same time, like, I just realized, like, after that, I just didn't really play much of them because I discovered I was a Genesis kid. So I didn't discover really RPGs until I got a PlayStation. Because go Google search like top 15 RPGs on Genesis. Good luck with that. There's fucking 5 on the system. Like, for whatever reason, that system just like
Shining Force and Phantasy Star. That's about it.
You just named them all. Congratulations. It literally, like, I didn't experience RPGs until I got to PlayStation. So like, as I got to PlayStation, all my previous joys of like fighting games and platformers, platformers, I was still doing that, but like all those like, I didn't give a shit about fighting games after I got my PlayStation. I was like, holy shit, look at all these RPGs. Look at the Resident Evil, Silent Hill games, Metal Gear. Like, all these like avenues of game genres expanded once I got a PlayStation, so I never went back to fighting games. And then when I did go back to fighting games, I realized how fucking terrible I am at them and how everybody's blown past me. So I just kind of given up on them. I'm just like, they're cool.
The secret is that everyone sucks at fighting games. The biggest reason why developers have a hard time teaching people about fighting games and why they need to add things like auto combos is because a lot of what makes fighting games great is under the hood, and it's concepts about adaptability and game sense that a game can't really teach you these things. The game can tell you that, oh, this move is -11 on block. You should punish it with this move. But actually getting that into the head of the person staring at the screen is extremely hard. And that's something that was easier in the days of Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat, because at the time, it was the very first and only option for head-to-head play in the arcades for a while, and 2, the games themselves are a lot more simple. There are no super meters. There's no There's nothing like that. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was the first game to have a super meter. So at the time, it was easy enough to just hit buttons and learn how to do a Hadoken. And by the time you learn how to throw fireballs and do dragon uppercuts, that's all you really needed. Now, though, it's like if you go up against an experienced veteran, it becomes very disheartening, especially since one thing that I've discovered. Well, one thing I discovered going to cons, because I live in the state of Maine, and we're actually a very big Smash state. We have several PR-ranked players up here.
Nice.
And so I would help run Smash events at a local convention called PortCon, because I had staffed there for a decade. And I would help them run that, and I would also be running Tekken as well, Tekken 7 specifically for the last couple of years, because that's my current game of choice. So I would sit there, and I would play one game of Tekken 7, and I would take it easy, right? Because I know that these people don't really know what they're doing for the most part. And all it would take is for me to beat them once, and then they would be like, nope, can't do this. But then they would go lose in Smash for 10 times and still be hungry for more. They would just get obliterated. And for several years, I was trying to wrap my head under why they're so willing to take the punishment in Smash but not in Tekken. And after playing some games with the New York scene, the Smash scene, because I've known some of them for several years. A buddy of mine named Silverstone, I've known him for 7-8 years, right? I've known him for a very long time.
He's been on the show before.
Oh, great. Okay. But yes, I've known him for a very long time. And through trying to teach him Tekken, I realized that the reason why people don't like being beaten in Tekken as opposed to Smash is because in Tekken, if you get counter hit with a specific move, if you get launched, control is taken away from you for about 6 to 7 seconds while you get comboed. And then you can get up and then you can start blocking or attacking, whatever. But in Smash, if you get hit, you still have control. You still have things like DI. You still have things. Only in very specific situations is control ever taken fully away from you. And that's the difference, is that people do not like having control taken away from them for long periods of time. And this is a problem that you can't really fix because Tekken is balanced around the idea of moves that go into combos.
Right.
Street Fighter is balanced around stuff like that. It's also another reason why people are more than willing to play Soul Calibur, because Soul Calibur combos are either non-existent or they don't last for very long.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing I see, like, my buddies who play fighting games, they, like, mention, like, getting out of a certain combo or, like, you know, like, pulling off a certain combo. And then, again, like, I just – the worst is when I see, like, the input on screen and I see, like, my buddy who'll be like, here's the combo I just did. And I just see, like, 1,000 buttons being hit in front of me, and I'm just like, I don't think my old brain can keep up with that shit anymore. Like, it's just nuts, like how the combos that they do and how they hit a certain point and like how they launch a certain person in a certain area to do this attack to this attack. I'm like, holy shit. Like, the only game I'll say that I attempted to go back to that I felt did a good job of trying to explain everything to people was Killer Instinct on Xbox, like on Xbox One. Mm-hmm. It was a launch game. So again, it was kind of in that mode where I was like, I haven't played a fighting game in a while, but I don't give a fuck. I just want games for this console. So I remember, and they did the whole free thing, which I thought was cool. Like, it's free. Here's one character, or you could pay $20 and just have all of them. And I remember getting the game and there was like a tutorial and it was teaching you how to play the game. But then it started getting into like way more detailed shit, like, counting frames and like doing all this shit that I have never heard of a day in my life. But my buddies who fucking play fighting games on a regular basis and are huge into them know exactly all those things. So I remember showing my buddy and he's like, dude, that's actually really cool that Killer Instinct's showing you these things. Like, obviously, yeah, you can just go on YouTube and find the shit if you want to. But this game is trying to, in a way, teach you, here's more methods that aren't just the norm. But then I'd go online in one match and I'd get my ass kicked. And I'm like, all right, that's right. I remember now fighting games are for me. So I just kind of, the ones that intrigue me are like the Mortal Kombat just because of like more of the content of like, holy shit, this is crazy. Not the fighting like aspect of it. You know what I mean? Like I watch the Mortal Kombat games and I'm just like, Jesus, like the amount of content they're able to do, how they're still nuts with fatalities. That game is like, horribly graphic. Like, it is like Mortal Kombat back in the day, our parents used to fucking worry like, oh no, he's gonna go kill somebody. Like, no, the new games are so graphically on point. Like, those are fucking horrifying. Those are more intense than any Gears of War game you'll ever play. Like, but again, obviously they're games for adults. Quit fucking putting kids in front of games that are made for adults. But overall, like, I appreciate the Mortal Kombat games, but at the same time, it's like, dude, I can't play this because I'll just fucking get stomped in and I'll be discouraged. And I'll play online. Online ruined fighting games for me because I thought I was good when I was just playing against my buddies. You know what I mean? And then I hop online. I'm like, I am not good at games like this at all.
So the secret when it comes to those long combos is you may not be able to digest the inputs individually, but the secret is that neither can we. What you want Well, you laugh, but the idea is that people can't remember 7 steps in a list more than that. 7 is their max. So what you do is if you take a long combo and you section it off between different sections. So like, for example, a standard Marvel combo for Marvel 3 would be on the ground, A, B, C, D, launch, press up to go in the air, A, B, C, D, spike to the ground, and then you do an OTG super, on the ground super. The idea is that that seems like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inputs, right? Which is more than you can remember. But if you section it off, you can actually make it 3. So it's A, B, C, D up, that's one section, A, B, C, D, second section, super, third section. So if you section off the combos, it becomes a lot easier to remember.
Right.
The other thing, online in fighting games is actually a part of it's actually a thing of contention right now because Guilty Gear is a favorite within the fighting game community. Most people that play it really like it, even if they never get good at it because the game is ridiculously complex. But the online for Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball Fighters as well, because they're both made by Arc System Works, is this really bad delay-based netcode, which is just even a tiny bit of latency can ruin the experience.
Yeah.
So Guilty Gear 2020 was announced at EVO this year, and the game looks beautiful. Not only that, but they're removing some of the really complex mechanics like character-specific wake-up times and other things like that. They're just ridiculous. So the number one question, though, is, are you going to improve online? And Arc System Works was fed up, and they just didn't even give us a PR response. They were just like, no. They just said no in no uncertain terms.
Right.
And a lot of this has to do with Japanese business ethics, like NIH, not invented here. But a lot of it is also more – it's weird because fighting games right now are undergoing a lot of issues. They lack certain features and options. They lack specific like ELO data and rankings that other competitive games like MOBAs have had figured out for the last decade now.
Right.
But what's funny is that for every fighting game that has a specific problem, another fighting game has solved it, right? So, for example, Tekken's Online is bad on PlayStation 4. It's serviceable on PC, but bad on PlayStation 4. So let's turn to Skullgirls. Skullgirls has fantastic online, some of the best netcode in the business, but it's also lacking modes and features and things that non-fighting game players are going to expect because Smash Brothers solved that.
Right.
But Smash Brothers also has absolutely fucking awful online. So
I was waiting for that. Like, how's that Smash Online? Fucking horrendous.
I really wanted to learn Smash Ultimate because the game looks really nice and fun to play. It's got the perfect guard, everything that I would want out of it. I can't.
Such a good game, but dude, online,
I can't play it online, and that's pretty much all I got for competitiveness. It's just so bad. So there's a lot of videos and things. There's a lot of discussion going on as far as fighting games. It's in a tumultuous, especially since for a long time Street Fighter was the top dog, and then Street Fighter 5 came out, and people were like, "This is actually kind of ass."
Yeah.
And Tekken 7 came out at just the right time, right? Because Tekken 7 is very much lacking in features and options that fans of the series have come to know. The game doesn't have big team battle. The game doesn't have a proper single-player campaign. The game doesn't have Tekken Force or Tekken Ball or anything like that. However, as far as a Tekken game goes, it is arguably the best system that Tekken has ever had. It is extremely balanced. It's fluid. It's fun to play. So it's so strange to see the evolution of the series and to see that Street Fighter is no longer the top dog.
Yeah,
it's so strange.
It's weird to me. Like, I mean, obviously, I won't say I feel that like the Japanese market when it comes to just online games in general, like Nintendo doesn't seem to give a fuck about it, like
no,
at all, and that's real sad. Like, because again, like certain companies, obviously PlayStation though, Sony is a Japanese company and they know like, yeah, we need to get our shit together and they made online better. Like obviously PS4 online is, I won't say perfect. Like, let me phrase that. Xbox Live, I still feel is a superior product based off of just their track record of having good fucking online service since the original Xbox. Like,
Yeah.
Microsoft like knew the online community was going to be there, so they put fucking money into it 15 years ago. You know what I mean? Like they knew this shit was going to be the way of everything going. And there's still features of Xbox Live today that aren't on PlayStation that I think are great. PlayStation finally with the PS4 got it right. I was like, good. You guys realize like, don't fuck up. Like you realize how much of importance this is. So, but then Nintendo literally is fucking so far behind when it comes to online that I'm just baffled. Like, I saw my buddy play a stream, Suburbanite Slob. He was on the show. I saw him play a stream of Mario Maker. Okay. Now, here's how tone deaf Nintendo is online. Mario Maker came out and you couldn't fucking play with your friends online in a created level. What are you doing, Nintendo?
What are they doing?
The fuck is wrong with you? Like,
can you play locally with your friends?
Yes. So you could play, it was 2-player locally, right? Because Nintendo, what are you talking about? Nintendo locally? Of course. Nintendo local, you could play fucking 9 people or 8 people and Smash locally. It's just Nintendo gives a shit about local gameplay, but when it comes to online, they're like, what is the internet? I don't know what the fuck it is. He was playing, so later on, Super Mario Maker on the Switch, they announced, it was literally, I think like a month ago maybe, they announced the ability to play games online in created levels with your buddies. And I'm like, great, a feature that should have fucking launched with this game. Awesome, thanks for adding it in. I saw my buddy, Suburbanite Slob, on Twitch, play it and stream it. I wish I was kidding you. It probably ran at the same frame rate that Mario 64 did for you on fucking PC. Yeah. It ran like 10 frames a second, and I was like, you cannot play this game at 10 frames a second. Like,
it's unplayable.
It's unplayable. And he's playing it. I'm like, and I just told him in the chat, I'm like, dude, just stop. Like, shut this shit off. Like, dude, this is not how Nintendo wants their product to be shown. Because it is fucking horrendous. I remember playing Smash on Switch, and it's the same thing. The frame rate is just ass. And it's so depressing.
Well, the worst part is you have to pay for it too. It's not
now
even like
like
you have to. And again, I'm sitting here with my gaming PC. PC don't have to pay shit. PC wins again.
Right. Like I think and again, I get that absolutely makes sense, right? The whole but also at the same time, I think Microsoft figured out first. I mean, obviously the thing is at the same time as a business point, if you can get people to spend $60 a year, you're not going to fucking say no. Like, sorry. Like I get dude, how much money has Microsoft made on Xbox Live alone? Good for them, dude. But they realized early on that this is a premium product and you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay to play online from the original Xbox, right? And I think Sony tried to be like, no, we're not going to do that for PS2 and PS3. But then when people were paying monthly for Xbox Live and when 360 was blowing PlayStation out of the water at first and how they were getting all this money from subscriptions, Sony finally on PS4 was like, yes, we're going to charge for people to play online. But at the same time, now the product on PS4 is considerably better. Microsoft has had 10 years of Xbox Live money before the new systems came out to make Xbox Live fucking crazy good. And Nintendo finally, when Nintendo's like, we're going to start charging for online, I had the same hope. I was like, you're making people pay to play online. That means you're going to put money into the online investment. You're going to make better servers. You're going to make it better. Whatever the fuck you need to do to make your service better, you're going to do because now people are paying for it. Granted, they're not paying a lot of money. I will tell you, Nintendo's online, I think it's $30 a year for a fucking family of 8. That's amazing. However, I would pay them $100 a year if the shit worked properly. I would pay you guys full on more money if you just told me Mario Maker will run in, normal frames and not fucking 10 frames a second. I'm so baffled that Nintendo is so fucking tone deaf. And again, Pokemon's coming out and I'm scared Pokemon is going to suck. I'm scared you're going to fuck up a turn-based RPG online, which is baffling to me. How are you going to fuck up turn-based combat on the internet?
Right.
you're going to do it somehow. Like, we're going to do it like an attack, and it's going to run in 5 frames a second. And I can't get it.
The ironic part about all this is that Mario Kart 8 works just fine.
It's great. Yeah, that's the one that, yes. So the gameplay of it works fine, right? So again, like, you can get into different things. Gameplay needs to work, period.
Mm-hmm.
It has to. And most Nintendo games, it doesn't. Mario Kart 8 does run online. But then you could start getting into, like, why does Nintendo need an app for voice chat? Or, you know, there's like a lot of different things that you can get into, but gameplay should work. And like the fact that most Nintendo games don't is pretty depressing. Mario Kart Online, though, for the most part, is pretty solid. I'll say that. Like,
so it's clear. So Nintendo, ever since the Wii launched, has basically been doing weirdo shit, right? Just to paraphrase from Donkey, right? Bye, fuckers. I'm doing weirdo shit now.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the Switch, Nintendo is not just marching to the beat of their own drum because they can, but because they actively want to. And one of the things they're absolutely not focusing on is online, because everybody knows that Nintendo, their games, their systems are built to be played locally. Right. And I think they're just looking at online as an expense that they don't need to make, because, you know, all of these games are better, they're optimal local. Right. Which is kind of a shame, because I'm the kind of person that has never played their Switch undocked, ever. Right. I'm one of those weirdo guys because I don't like it docked. It's a tiny screen. It's uncomfortable. I hate it. Right. And I have no reason to bring my Switch anywhere else, because if people are going to do that, well, people are going to do that. Right. I don't have to.
Yeah, 95% of the time I've played my Switch, it's been docked because I don't travel much and I work from home. Like, I don't have some commute where I get on a bus or a train or whatever. And like, that shit doesn't happen for me. So like Zelda, Mario Odyssey, like all those games, I sat on my couch with that awesome Pro Controller, because fuck those Joy-Cons, sat on there with my awesome Pro Controller and played them. And I was like, this is great. This is a great experience. Playing those Joy-Cons portably on like an airplane, I was like, oh, I don't like that. Yeah, I was playing Mario Odyssey at the office. I drove into the office. For like, I work from home, but sometimes I have to go to the office. I brought my Mario Odyssey with me with the Joy-Cons, and I turned it off. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'd rather have a Pro Controller on the couch. I'm not playing Odyssey like this. But no, like, it's so, like, you're right, though. Obviously, they focus on the local aspect, but times have changed so much to the point where, like, for example, my father-in-law will tell your son needs to get out more and socialize. I'm like, no, you don't get it. He is socializing. Today, though, the internet makes it capable to socialize by just like you don't have to go to someone's house to like hang out with them. Back in our day, like, we had to. There was no fucking option. It's not like, let me just fire up the internet and do. No, I had to go to my buddy's house to play Mortal Kombat on a Genesis. Like, yeah. I had to go to my buddy's house to play fucking, No Mercy. And like, I didn't have the option to sit down and do this. Dude, if I had the option, I would have sat on my ass at my house and played all my games online with my buddies. Now kids are playing online where that's their social, that's their social network now. They get, like, my son Alex will get into a party with his friends, and which is the same thing I do now as an adult. I get into a party with my buddies, even if we're not playing the same game, and we just fuck around and talk. Like, we just hang out, like we're just hanging out together. Like, Nintendo, I don't think they've realized that, like, hey, yes, you can play this shit locally, and that's fun, but 90% of people now aren't playing in the same room. Like, so many people are playing fucking miles away, if not hundreds of miles away, that you need to get this shit working right.
It's very baffling. It is very weird. It's funny too, because I mean, growing up with the PC, I've been a PC gamer all my life. Right. I still remember playing Counter-Strike Source, right? I still remember buying a copy of Half-Life 2 because my magazine of PC Gamer said that this is the greatest game that God has ever created. So I bought
so influential, those gaming magazines back in the day. That was like your fucking handbook of God. You're just, of course, they say it's good.
Propaganda, dude. Yeah. Propaganda. Well, it's propaganda, and yet I go to the store and I see just a random copy of Half-Life 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember hearing that game was great. So we bought it. And I went home and played it, and I was just like, yes, this is, in fact, the greatest game that God has ever created.
Right. Like, it's just in your head. You're just like, I've heard this is good, and then you get it, and you're like, yeah. Most of the time, those gaming magazines, I won't say, sometimes you could tell, like, yo, I'm not going to say you're being paid to write a good review for this, but like,
Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah, basically, I'm like, this game is not fucking good. Like this, I'm sorry, like this game is not good. Also, too, like some people's reviews. Obviously, if you look at reviews now, everybody. The good thing though is that on the internet, there's certain personalities that you can click with, right? Like this reviewer or this personality on the internet has similar tastes to me, so you might see their review and go, okay, that's probably accurate because I connect with this reviewer or whoever it is, Twitch streamer, whatever the case is. But then there's some people that I see review games and I'm like, there's something fucking wrong with you. Like I've said it before. I don't personally dislike the guy, but Jose Otero, for whatever fucking reason, that man would give every single Nintendo first party game a 9 or 10, even though it didn't deserve it. Like, there's clearly not good Zelda, like not good Nintendo first party games, but for whatever reason, he was so jazzed about every one of them, and he would talk it up like it was the greatest thing ever. And I'm just like, I'm talking like a Kirby game on Wii U. I think he gave it like a 9 or something, and I'm like, dude, no one else fucking thinks this game is a 9. Like, you just think this game is a 9, and you love it so much. And I'm just like, I was always baffled by that. But at the same time, you look back at those gaming magazines, and it was the same shit. Like, they would say that as well. Like, you would see certain games get reviewed well, and you're just like, what the fuck are they thinking, dude? This is not a good game. I don't know where you see this game coming from.
Where's my Zelda?
Where's what?
Where's my Zelda?
You gotta repeat that. I have no idea what you're saying, kid.
Where's my skeleton?
Your skeleton? I think there's bags that are in the room. Hey, I can get them in a second, okay? I'm in the middle of recording a podcast, okay? Hey, do you want to play on your tablet for now? No? Okay. Do you want me to turn on the living room TV? Okay, hold on. Alexa, turn on Nickelodeon. All right. Sorry about that.
Oh, I love long distance parenting. Hell yeah.
Yeah, right? Dude, I have wired my house to be able to sit from my fucking game room and do anything. It's the greatest thing in the world. Dude, yeah. My wife thought I was nuts when I told her when we bought our own house that I was going to go insane. Like, I was going to do all sorts of shit. I have 12 smart switches. I have 8 Alexas in the house. I have a remote control thing for my main living room. I have lights, thermostats, sprinklers, everything hooked up to smart devices to where I can literally sit here and fucking do anything. My kids leave lights on upstairs. I'm like, boom, turn off the whole upstairs, and it does it. Like, and it's nice because, like, I'm sitting here doing this. You want to watch TV? Cool. A word. Go turn that on, and it does. God bless technology. I'm looking forward to me being Wall-E here shortly. Just that fat fuck that sits in a chair that just floats around. That's the goal. That's the goal.
That is not dystopia. That is the goal.
That is a fucking, like, Disney has a time machine, and they went ahead and found out what we were all going to be like one day. Like, I'm telling you, dude, it's sad, but dude, I'm telling you, like, they were like, what about getting food? I'm like, if Alexa comes out with a fucking thing that gets me food, you best believe I'll be the first one to beta test it. Go get me a fucking soda right now, and it goes good.
Right.
I'll be so happy. All right, let me put some show notes to edit this shit. Hold on. I'm gonna say 103 through 105.
Yep, you'll know.
Yeah, as soon as I get to that part, I'll be like, all right, I just got to scrub back a little bit, figure out where I was. 105. Let's just say 105. Yeah, let's just do 106. That's fine. And of course, I'll just scrub through and figure it out. Makes editing a little easier. So, yeah, no, but those gaming personalities, like I said, like, there's certain personalities now that I click with, but those gaming magazines, they, like you said, propaganda, dude. Also, it's kind of hard not to be propaganda when the gaming magazine is 300 pages and 275 of them are fucking ads. Like,
right.
That's how those gaming magazines made their money, man. Like, I get it, but yeah, dude, some games, man, they were dead fucking wrong on.
Yeah, of course. So, it was So what happened was that I moved out of my parents' house in late 2011, and at the time I was working part-time seasonal at GameStop, and
Nice.
there was a game that was releasing in late 2011 that straight up changed my life. I had played the first one back in 2008 somewhat, and I didn't really understand the appeal. But in 2011 they released the sequel to it. That game is Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So my coworkers were talking about it, and they were going to get it, and they were going to play it together, and they were going to work together to beat it. And so I say this now because I didn't actually get the game until 2013. I was working at GameStop at the time. It was a full-time position, and I was working with a coworker that I'd worked with back in 2011. And I was wondering what game I should rent, and he suggested Dark Souls, and he gave me a couple of tips. He said you should pick up the Master Key, you should probably pick the Warrior class, right? And so I go home, I put it in my 360. And boy, oh fucking boy, I hadn't been this lost and confused in a video game in such a long time, because the game gave you button prompts, they gave you examples of how combat works. The tutorial for the game is just fantastic in how it teaches you as you play. But the instant you arrive in Firelink Shrine, you're just off to the races. The game gives you nothing. And it was such a liberating feeling, because at the time, developers were so insecure about their players not being able to beat their games.
And they'd hold your hand the whole fucking game. And yeah,
the whole game. To the point where it's basically a parody, like in the first stage of Undertale, where Toriel leads you through all the spikes and shit. So Dark Souls at the time was a breath of fresh air, despite its incredibly hostile design. I tried so hard to get through the catacombs until I realized that there was a staircase leading up to the Undead Burg, and then the zombies would die in 2 hits, and I was like, oh, this is where I should be going. Right. So from there, I just kept going, and I loved it. I think I must have died so many times playing that game because it was just a goddamn nightmare.
Right.
But it really defined what I want out of games, is that I want that kind of challenge where the game just says, no, you're going to sit here and you're going to beat it. But of course, I also want the game to be able to give me the tools to be able to complete that challenge, which Dark Souls is a bit iffy on. Okay, I say this as a fan of the series that has over 500 hours in the games, right? Dark Souls 1 is basically teetering on the edge of fair and unfair. It is fair in some respects, very unfair in others. It also teeters on the line of player hostility and player friendly, because the game does give you the ability to win, but at no point does the game ever lead you in the right direction. And for a lot of players, that's really hostile. Sure. They want the game to help them out a little bit.
Right.
And then Dark Souls 2 comes out and ruins everything. So Dark Souls 2 is the black sheep of the series. A lot of people enjoy it because the PvP in Dark Souls 2 is really good. The addition of power stancing weapons was really nice. It became easier to wield weapons, so you have a lot more options with how you build your character. So because of that, PvP in the game was really exciting. But everything outside of PvP just, oh my lord. The game itself was fun, but Miyazaki was not at the helm for this game, and it shows, because the game was very flat out trying to kill you. It just was not fair. Dark Souls is designed for 1v1 combat, so the game was just like, fuck it, let's throw all of the enemies all at once at you in specific zones, and the game is a mess. Thankfully, Scholars of the First Sin alleviates that somewhat, but the game is still very much the black sheep of the franchise. Now, at around this time, the PlayStation 4 released. Right. And I was very impressed by the E3 conference that basically took what Xbox One, the faux pas that they did, and was just like, okay, we're just going to exploit that. So I bought PlayStation 4 at launch with Battlefield 4. And that, oh my God. All right. So the PlayStation 4 had nothing going for it for such a long time, right?
It sure fucking didn't. And that's where I, as a primary Xbox player, but I do have all the consoles, right? I'm not one of those people that's like, fuck other consoles. I have everything. I have to in order to experience the best of gaming. That's how I feel. But yeah, dude, as an Xbox person who primarily plays on Xbox, I couldn't fucking understand why people were buying PlayStation 4s. There just wasn't like first party content coming out at all. Like they came out with Knack, which is a fucking joke.
Knack.
Fucking Knack. And then Killzone, which I played Killzone, and I'm like, I've played better shooters years before this, dude. Like, what the fuck, man? It was just weird.
Strawberry Rangers.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do it in 1 second, okay? Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
Out real fast. 119. All right. So we were just saying
PlayStation 4, no games for a while.
No games for a while. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I've talked to you about Dark Souls because I'm leading up to something. So the PlayStation
I have a
4.
very good feeling I know what you're leading up to.
So the PlayStation 4 launches, right? Now, I did pick up a few games for it. The Last of Us, I picked up the remaster because at the time I had a PlayStation 3, like right at the end of its life cycle. Right. So I played Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. I played a whole bunch of those games, and I was super impressed by it. But by the time I got my PlayStation 4, I traded in my PlayStation 3, so I was happy to see the remaster.
For sure.
Like, it was limited, but I had it. But the reason why I kept my PlayStation 4 is because every time I looked at it, I knew that in late 2014, I would finally be able to play Bungie's next great game. So the reason why I got my PlayStation 4 at launch was so I could play Destiny the day it came out. And because I was working, again, I worked at GameStop at the time, so it was a no-brainer for me to pick up the console so I could tell my customers, hey,
for
you
sure,
get
like
this,
you
this.
have to kind of know what to talk about. You have to know what you're talking about in order to be able to sell it. I guess.
So for a long time, I kept it, and even though it was gathering dust compared to my gaming PC, I was like, I'm eventually I'm going to get mileage off of it. Destiny comes out. I'm at the midnight launch. I play it, and I'm having a good time with it at first. It feels like a Bungie product, and I get through the campaign in like 5 hours, and I expected this. I expected the end game for the game to be stronger because the game is supposed to be an MMO light shooter, right? You're supposed to group up with other people and do raids and stuff like that. But then I realized the end game content is just exactly more of the same. And I realized the grind for the game is unholy to the point where you need to repeat a very specific section of a very specific mission in order to grind for all of the orange gear. And then there are like 3 different raids that you can do, all of which are fairly easy to complete. And that's when I realized I experienced the entire game in less than 2 weeks. A game that is supposed to be a proto-sequel to a game that I spent 2 years on. I was fed up. I realized the PlayStation 4 is going to get like no fucking games. I traded it in for a Wii U. I ended up getting...
Wow.
Yeah. I traded it in for a Wii U because 2014 was strong for the console.
For sure.
Bayonetta 2, Smash Wii U.
Mario Kart 8.
Mario Kart 8, like there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I traded in the PS4, got all that shit, enjoyed the crap out of it, and then I completely forgot that this was happening. I cannot believe I did this. In February, they released Bloodborne.
Right.
Bloodborne, a game that I still have not played to this day.
Oh my God.
I still haven't played Bloodborne. As a fan of Souls games, as a fan of From Software, I still haven't played Bloodborne. And then right after that, the floodgates start coming in. All of these amazing games for PlayStation 4 that I still haven't gotten a chance to play because I traded in the PlayStation 4 right before all of those games came out for a system that died right after I got it.
Yeah, basically. It 100% did. Jesus, dude, that fucking sucks.
Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah, literally. I agree with you though. So I got an Xbox One at launch because again, huge Xbox guy, love Xbox.
Right.
You can say I'm a fanboy. I don't give a fuck. I play on everything, but I prefer my Xbox 1,000%. I'll tell everybody that. Got a PS4 through my work. Okay, so my work has this like reward system. You get points, blah blah blah. You can redeem it for shit. I was in no way, shape, or form going to fucking pay $400 for a PlayStation 4 when there was like bullshit out for it, right? I was like, again, that whole like first like 2 to 2.5 years of that console launch, there was no first party shit. The best games for it were just fucking third party games, Destinies and fucking Call of Duties. I'm like, you can play this on Xbox. Why are people giving a shit about this system? Like, why do people care? And then they started doing the smart thing when you can't get first party shit out is re-release old first party shit in remaster, which is good on them. Uncharted collection, God of War collection started happening. Last of Us, like smart, very smart. Get those out so people have some shit to play. But then like all of a sudden, like, yeah, good game after good game after good game came out. I tried Bloodborne. Again, I never played the Souls games. I played Bloodborne. My buddy or my brother-in-law bought it. He's a huge Sony guy. Came over. I played like 5 minutes of it. And I was like, fuck this game. I'm not doing this. Like, I can't. Again, I was like, I can't. I play games to try to have a good time, not fucking scream, pissed off, feeling like I got cheated. And I was just like, I'm good. Now, again, had I played the other games in the series before that, had I had like some sort of stepping ground up to Bloodborne, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. I couldn't fucking stand it. But then, like, no, dude, like, fucking Horizon Zero Dawn is so goddamn good. It is such a good video game. And then God of War is such a good video game. And fucking Spider-Man is such a good video game. And I'm just like, I'm glad these are coming out now because, like, again, I bought a PS3 hoping. Let's put it this way. I bought a PS3 waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3. We all saw how that train happened. How I bought that PS3 for no fucking reason. I ended up playing some PlayStation 3 games and stuff, but like my PS3 barely got used. Like barely got used. It was like you say, like your PS4. It fucking sat there and collected dust forever. I played Little Big Planet. That was cool. You know what I mean? Family fun, whatever.
Right, yeah.
But like, dude, I played Last of Us on PS3 and then, you know, like, okay, but dude, I'm really bummed out. Because again, same thing. I used my work points. I got a Wii U. And like all that good shit came out for the Wii U for that like one like year or 18 months, right? It was like Mario Kart 8, Smash, Mario Maker, Splatoon, like all of those came out, I think, within like 18 months of each other or 2 years of each other. And like those were like the best 2 years of that console. And then that fucking thing just dropped off a cliff. Like fucking
crazy.
Gone. And I was like, this is nuts how quickly that shit dropped off. But yeah, I'm kind of bummed that you haven't experienced those games. Now, hold on. Did Bloodborne come to PC, though?
No, Bloodborne, it was published specifically by Sony. So it's a PS4 exclusive game. It was never ported. I would love it if it were ported because then I could run it at 60 FPS, which would be very nice. Sure. But as it stands, if I want to play the game, I would have to buy a PlayStation 4. I mean, it's kind of funny because as much of a fan as I am of the Dark Souls series, I wasn't too keen on Sekiro.
That was going to be my next question, actually, for you.
So Sekiro solves a lot of the problems of the Souls games. It is extremely masterfully designed. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's a bad game because it's not at all. It is a superb product. And if you haven't tried the Souls series, I do recommend giving Sekiro a shot.
Right.
My biggest issue is that I just didn't like it, and I can't really give you a good reason as to why. Maybe the parry mechanic didn't sit right with me. Maybe the linear nature of the game didn't sit right with me. Maybe the fact that Dark Souls has a more interesting universe than Sekiro does, maybe that didn't sit right with me. I don't know. But I will say that Sekiro has far better combat. It's got a lot more options within combat. Stealth is viable in Sekiro, very viable actually. The game's story is rather cool, and if you haven't tried a Souls game, I do recommend it. Absolutely.
Where was your big take on the whole they made this game easier, or they have an easy mode? Because
on Sekiro?
Yeah, because for example, like I personally, and this is my opinion, I don't play the Souls games, right? I haven't played them. I don't have anything against them. Again, it was a franchise that I just didn't get a chance to play because I was playing other shit, right? I don't have a problem with the Souls games. I also never, ever, ever, ever will have a problem with a developer giving a customer options. Ever. What is wrong with a game giving you an option to do this a certain way? Like, there's certain games, for example, like with Call of Duty. Yes, it is very heavy on tutorials, but you could also turn all that shit off if you ever want to.
So as far as Dark Souls goes, people who don't like Dark Souls or haven't played it complain a lot about the difficulty, but the funny part is that fans like me, we like Dark Souls for everything other than the difficulty. Like me, if I had the choice, I would instead of giving Dark Souls an easy mode, I would just tone the difficulty down a bit. Just a little bit. because I love Dark Souls for its level design, its interconnected maze-like level design, its story and universe and lore. I don't like it for its difficulty. Almost anybody who says they do is either lying or trying to sell you something.
Right. They like getting their dick kicked in over and over. And I'm like, I just don't see the appeal of that. I understand difficult games. Example, I played Cuphead. I loved the shit out of that game. That game was fantastic. Was it hard? Yes. There's a difference, like you said, you had mentioned earlier, there's a difference between hard and unfair, right? Mm-hmm. I don't ever feel like people were talking about fucking Cuphead being on level of Dark Souls. Personally,
it's not.
Personally, I don't think it's that hard because every time I died in Cuphead, I knew why. I didn't like go, that's fucking bullshit, or that bullet didn't hit me. Like, no, I fucking died because of that reason.
So,
and
okay.
It was very, very on point, and it was very like, the game wasn't fucking up that caused you to die. It wasn't some frame rate issue. No, like, you died for a certain specific reason, but also at the same time, the game was very fair in here's what happened, here's how you can get back. Like, there was no, like, I never died in Cuphead and went, what the fuck was that? Like, so no, I know it died. I know how it died.
I love that you bring up Cuphead. And the biggest thing that I realized after getting into Monster Hunter, which is another difficult game, is the difference between Dark Souls and something like Cuphead or Monster Hunter, besides mechanics, is their demeanor. Dark Souls as a game is, for lack of a better word, dark. It is depressing. It is somber. It is oppressive. There are no happy endings in Dark Souls. If you follow the character stories and the quests and everything, the little side things that you can do, everybody either ends up dead or imprisoned or just a victim of their own hubris. It is awful. It is so oppressive. It's interesting. It's provocative and it's compelling, but it's depressing. Cuphead, on the other hand, is, this 1930s bouncy animation style. The music is upbeat, big band. So when you die, it's hard not to have a good time in Cuphead because, everything is happy. In Monster Hunter, it's the same thing. It's Monster Hunter as a game where you fight a T-Rex for 10 times and beat it once. And then eventually you get good at it and it's not that big of a problem. But the game never stops being difficult. But the difference is that Monster Hunter, again, is light and cheery. The music in the hub is like the hub itself is grand, towering masterpiece of parts that are built from the ships that went to the new world. And then all of the weapons have, like, when you make weapons and armor, there's these fun cutscenes. And then you go to the Meowster Chef, which is these big anthropomorphic cats that make food for you. And it's like, it's this happy, fun game with like ridiculous armor pieces, super flamboyant moves. And it's like, yeah, you're getting your ass kicked by a monster, but the game is always pushing you forward. The game is never telling you that you're not good enough. The game is just telling you you're not good enough yet. Go watch the funny scene with the cats. Go maybe try a new weapon. Go get your items all set up because you didn't use the proper items last time. Get back in there again. I believe in you. And then when you do it, the game actively gives you feedback and says, yes, I knew you could do it. Good job. Time for the next challenge.
So Dark Souls is very like,
Dark Souls is the opposite of that. It just straight up tells you you suck. That is the difference, I think. That is the difference maker when it comes to hard games. If you contrast a difficult game with a happy, lively demeanor, you'll get a lot farther. Now, the other thing, of course, is that the other side of the equation is difficulty and accessibility in games, because that is a conversation that has cropped up recently, especially with the release of Sekiro. You couldn't get anywhere on social media without a take on Sekiro's difficulty. That went on for like a month.
I was just blown away by people being so upset that there was options for the customer. Like, I was like, that's how I looked at it. I didn't look at it as like that's not a Souls game if there's an easy mode. Like, but you have the option to play it the exact same way they've always encouraged, they've always developed it. Like, it's not like, I would get mad. I would understand if like you bought Dark Souls 4, right? I understand if you bought that game and it wasn't as difficult, or if there was a change in that, a drastic change in that compared to the previous games. So the people who have loved that franchise forever are like, what the fuck? Why would you take away this option? Taking away options, I can understand you get mad at. Adding options, I don't get. Like,
so the idea is Dark Souls technically does have a quote unquote easy mode, and it's cooperative, because if you play the game cooperative with other players, the game doesn't actually scale at all. So if you're having problems with a difficult section, there's actually like a whole Reddit community and stuff like that of people whenever a Dark Souls game launches, where you can just be like, I'm stuck on this specific section, and people are like, happy to help. Here's my password. I've got a summoning sign at such and such location. So people in the Dark Souls community are always more than willing to help other players. And to them, that is where the difficulty modifier should lie. Going to the community and asking for help, because there are tens of thousands of people that are more than willing to do this. Sekiro, though, doesn't have co-op, which is actually a big reason why I'm not the biggest fan of Sekiro, because I like Souls co-op. I wanted there to be co-op in Sekiro, but there isn't. But I agree with you more than I agree with them, but I think that's where the conflict is coming from, that they removed co-op and gave it in an easy mode instead of having co-op be the difficulty modifier.
Then, see, if that's the part, then that I can understand it, and being upset by. Like, why would you get rid of a option that's been a part of the staple of games forever? Like, that you can absolutely get upset by. Like, I don't play these games on a general basis, so I didn't know the big deals. All I was seeing people bitch about was easy mode, and I was like, are we really example, Death Stranding's going to have a fucking mode in it that they literally said is made for people who like to watch movies. Like, yeah, I guarantee you that mode is going to have like 6 button presses and you're fucking done with the game or something. Like, it's probably going to be the easiest game in the world you'll ever play. But are people going to get all pissed off at that? No. Like, I was just blown away.
So a lot of this is also insecurity, because when I played Dark Souls, right, the difficulty was refreshing in itself. We hadn't seen a game like this. And Dark Souls, to me, and Demon Souls as well, I can't forget about Demon Souls, felt like a response, because games at the time were getting easier and easier and easier, to the point where even hard mode felt like normal mode from a game from the past. So now you take that, right, and then you have a game that like Dark Souls, which brings in a bunch of that old school design and puts it into the modern era in a big budget AAA game. What these people don't want is for games to become easier and easier overall again. So there's an insecurity when it comes to having more options, and if more people pick easy mode, people are going to developers are going to start making their games easier as a response, which someone like me, I would hate that, right? Because I like a good challenge. But this does go, I resisted it for a long time, but difficulty does go hand in hand with accessibility in games. Because for a lot of people, depending on the game that they're playing, easy mode is the only mode. Like, for example, let's take Resident Evil 2, the remake, right? Let's take that. Now, that game is pretty good, and it does have difficulty options. But let's say you're deaf.
Right.
Try playing a survival horror game while you're deaf.
Right.
These games don't have the accessibility options to be able to counteract the sound design of these games, to have visual feedback instead, so you won't know where a threat is coming or something like that. Like, try playing Alien Isolation while you can't hear. It's impossible.
It's actually impossible.
So for these people, easy mode is the only mode.
Right.
Like, take Beat Saber, for example. Let's say you were missing an arm. Easy mode is the only mode, unless they add in a mode for one-armed people, which in response to that, they did.
Yeah, it's getting, like, that part of it's good, because accessibility is getting better and better. I remember, it was weird that I remember seeing this, but I thought it was cool. Gears of War 5 apparently was, like, the highest rated game when it came to accessibility, meaning when you first turn on Gears of War 5 or Gears 5, there is an option immediately to set up a adaptive controller, which is the controller Microsoft developed for, people with disabilities and handicaps and all that stuff.
Right, yeah,
There's an option right off the bat. If you need to set up a game with the adaptive controller, go this route. I'm like, that's good.
Yep, you can do that on PC too.
Right.
Yeah.
There's multiple options with colorblind settings, because my brother-in-law is colorblind, so there were games he couldn't play because they were colorblind. Now there's like multiple colorblind options.
Yeah.
Apparently the detail in the subtitles was like more detailed, because I put the subtitles on just to make sure I hear every detail. They would have like creaky noise. Like, they said that in the subtitle, even though like that's not a line of dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, those are types of things that I think are cool, because they're getting to the point where they're trying to include everybody, which is great. But like, you're right though. Easy mode, like my father-in-law who plays video games, he enjoys them. He doesn't have the time to get super good at video games.
You can't.
He enjoys them, but he's just not one of those people that has the time to get good enough to get past certain parts in games. He plays like almost all of his games in easy mode because he just doesn't want to play hours and hours and hours trying to beat a certain part. Again, that's just on him, and that's the way he likes it. If you want to be that person that fucking gets smashed all day, every day, and dies over and over and over, I think there should be an option for you as well. Like, sure. Like, if you want, again, look at Gears. You could put it on fucking the hardest difficulty and have the worst time of your life and get mad. Or some people like that and think it's a challenge and they want that challenge. I just got so thrown off by that argument. I couldn't understand it.
So what happened was Monster Hunter World kind of helped me out with that because the game is a fair challenge, but it's so easy to. Dark Souls, the difficulty modifier is co-op, right? And Monster Hunter as a series is built predicated on co-op from the very beginning. From 2004, the game was built to take advantage of the PlayStation 2's online feature so people could play co-op. Right. Monster Hunter World takes that to a whole nother level where it's like you're having a tough time with a monster, well, you could just throw up an SOS flare and people will join your game on the fly.
Right.
And it's crazy how that works. But not only that, Monster Hunter World is a game that once you realize the monster's attacks are predictable, but all you have to do is look and see how they attack a little bit, and it becomes much easier to understand. Not only that, but when you start putting items into the fray, it starts getting easier. And let's say your weapon just, it feels clunky. You don't like how it plays. Well, there's 14 of them, and they're all very, very different. I feel like there are, as much as there are ways to make difficulty easier for people who don't want them by adding in easy modes, which is great. I feel like developers can also give people the tools to make the game easier without just resorting to a menu option that it's the invisible hand of difficulty. But at the same time, I said that on Twitter in a conversation, and then a verified account from a guy that is an advocate for disabled gamers sent me a screenshot of all the people that were really, really, really happy that Death Stranding had a very easy mode because they're disabled. Right. And I was just like, okay, you got me.
Right.
You got me.
Like I said, I will never shit on a developer giving people options to play. I just think it was weird that seemed to be the argument on Twitter with people. Like, this game shouldn't have an easy mode. This game is hard by nature. If you can't handle it, just don't play it. I'm like, so
there is a sense of superiority by being able to say that you beat Dark Souls or you're able
to. So a person can't hear, so they shouldn't go watch movies. Oh, because you can't hear, your fucking ears don't work. Just don't enjoy things. Like, that's the part I just didn't get. Like, I was like, that's the argument you have. Like, if you can't handle a Dark Souls game, don't play it. Like, that's the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard in my life. But again, that's why I like when you started talking about Dark Souls, I was like, I wonder where his take is on this.
Well, not only that, but like again, there's the difficulty modifiers with co-op with Monster Hunter and with Dark Souls. Like Monster Hunter, for example, when World came out, there was a whole thing on Reddit. It was called the Adopt a Hunter program, where you would basically find people that were having a tough time with the game and being like, okay, let me help you out. Let me get you through this section, because Monster Hunter World is way better than previous games at telling players what the systems are, how everything works. But there are still a lot of things under the hood that you won't discover unless you stumble across it or you're specifically told. Like, there's stuff 200 hours into the game I am still trying to figure out.
That's awesome.
Whenever I see a new player coming into the game, I actually have a Google Doc. It's a 5-page Google Doc that I wrote up myself, giving people the basics and telling people what to do. Like, nice. It's not exactly combat skill that wins fights. It's being prepared. Being prepared is the first step. If you don't have your item loadout all set up, if you don't have that all customized, then you're going in handicapped. You're handicapping yourself. But this is something that, unless you know Monster Hunter, is unintuitive for people, because, you know, most people believe that they can just go into a fight and be just fine and that they should save their items for the harder times. But no, items are everything in Monster Hunter. You have to use them all the time. So the Adopt a Hunter program allows the community to give newer players a leg up, and it worked, because Monster Hunter World is Capcom's best-selling title of all time by far. It's not even close. Over 14 million copies sold. Of course, the other thing is, with Monster Hunter World, games like that don't exactly grow on fucking trees, right?
Right.
Like on PC, it has sold over 6 million copies on PC. This is the first time it's ever been on PC, and the game is frequently on the top 10 most played games of that month on Steam. The game is being played a lot because games like Monster Hunter World are not made every day, and PC players were hungry for it, very hungry for it. So I'm glad that they did that, and I'm glad that they balanced the difficulty, and I'm very glad because I wasn't interested in Monster Hunter before, but now I can just consider myself an addicted fan. I love it.
It's funny because like my son got interested in Monster Hunter. How? I don't know. Right? I don't know.
Well, it's basically big, scarier Pokemon. There you go.
Yeah, I honestly I think that's what it was. Right? So he got super interested in Monster Hunter. I had never played him, so I wasn't like discouraging or encouraging. I just never really heard much about him, so I just never really told him good or bad. Played it, got super obsessed with it. Played the fuck out of the DS ones. Like he loved them to death. Got the Wii U version when we had that. Played that. Like he was just super happy about it. When World came out, I bought it and I was like, let me try this and let me just see how it is. And for whatever reason, it's just not my jam. And again, didn't shit on it. I was just like, I guess the thing is though, is like you said, the be prepared thing, I probably wasn't. You know, like there's just a lot of things that I wasn't aware of in the game. Meanwhile, my buddy who barely plays video games, when Monster Hunter World came out, motherfucker stopped doing everything else in the world and just plays Monster Hunter. Like, he doesn't give a shit about... He used to play Magic the Gathering a lot. Doesn't give a fuck anymore. He's like, dude, I just want to play Monster Hunter. That's all he played. And then, like... Because, again, he was in the same boat. He's like, dude, Monster Hunter's awesome. I played it all this on this time. And he's like, I love it. And then I was asking, like, hey, what games are you playing? And I'm like, well, yeah, I know Monster World. And he's like, well, the new expansion's coming out. And I'm like, yeah, I forgot all about that shit. Like, he's so jazzed about it. And, again, I'm like... Yeah, I'm glad that, and my son, I don't even know how much my son's played it because, like, my son's into, like, 900 video games now. Like, he's, the cool thing, though, is, like, I'm happy he has his own taste in games because, like I said, like, I don't want him just to be a little me. I want him to be his own person and have his own opinions and thoughts. Like, I don't want to, have I influenced him on Xbox? Yeah, I will say that. Like, he prefers his Xbox over everything else. But also, he put down his Xbox for months playing Breath of the Wild. So, you know what I mean? Like, he's very... opinionated of his own stuff. Like, he plays the shit out of certain games, and I'm just like, I don't get how you do that, but all right, good for you.
Yeah.
So same thing. I mean, he'd be like, Dad, you don't play this. I'm like, no, I don't play that. Like, no, sorry, kid, I don't. Mm-hmm. Speaking of games that have been fun to play and not so fun to play, I had asked you a question earlier that you may or may not have an answer for. I usually ask everybody, during, like, when you get old enough to buy your own games and buy your own systems and all that stuff, usually you get all happy, you save up your money, you buy a game, and then it ends up being not what you expect. What is the worst game you bought with your own money?
Destiny.
There you go. That works. That works.
It may not be the correct answer, but it's the one that immediately jumps out because I traded in a whole console because of it, right? Like, how I can't... There are other crappy games that I've bought with my own money, but at the time, I got plenty of playtime with them and I enjoyed them at the same time. So I can't, they might be bad, but I can't sit here and say that, oh, they're, I didn't get my money's worth. But with Destiny, it's like, I hated it so much that I traded in the proprietary console, completely forgot that Bloodborne was a thing for a game console that just didn't release another game except for Splatoon and Super Mario Maker on it. That was just on its death row. It's like, I made such a huge... I can't say I made a mistake, right? Because the games that I did get for Wii U were great. Bayonetta 2 is one of my all-time favorites now. And I wouldn't have experienced it if I didn't get mad at Destiny.
Absolutely.
But regardless, like, Destiny really, like, I was so hyped and so jazzed, and I just could not even fathom how subpar. It's not even that the product was bad, right? Because it played well. It was just so below the bar that I've come to expect from Bungie. Destiny 2 has all of these BS corporate microtransaction bullshit in it that now that they're free from Activision, they made it free to play on Steam with the DLC being available for a small amount of money, that, like, their next project will just, I hope against hope that they get it right this time.
I have a feeling they learned a lot from that them doing, like, Activision kind of fucking things and just doing the things that they do with video games. But Bungie as a company, I know they're a good company to make great games. So even though they weren't owned by Microsoft, but I mean, back when Microsoft was just kind of like, make this for us, please. Like, if Bungie was an independent studio, I think they would definitely be overall better. Just
This
'cause,
right
they have
here,
the
like
freedom to do
you
their
just
shit.
mentioned, like Microsoft said to Bungie, here's some money, make something. Why publishers don't do this? Why companies don't do this on the regular baffles me, right? You're hiring another entity, a developer, to make a product, a specific kind of product, right? Just let them make it. Stop interfering to maximize.
That's why honestly, Spider-Man was the best superhero game I ever played. Period. Spider-Man was so fucking good. Like they saw a company knowing how to make a certain type of game and went, here company, here's a fucking bunch of money. Go make this game and like look at it. Like, and then all of a sudden they're like, by the way, Insomniac, you did a great job. Here's a check for fucking how much money to buy the studio. But yeah, like that game, like again, like just I think it was Marvel actually, because Marvel had their own studio where they were doing game studio where they were doing bullshit, like not good shit at all. And then they finally went, fuck it, we're not doing our own studio anymore. We're closing down Disney Studio. And any of our Disney properties, we're just going to give to other people to have them make the game proper. And so far, since they've done that, they haven't had like a bad game. So yeah, like it's weird that happens, but the problem with independent studios is if they don't get that person coming asking them to pay, make a game for them, then they're fucking scared they're going to lose their jobs. And unfortunately, there's like a weird side business that I'm sure we don't know nothing about.
I do have to correct you. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was pretty bad.
Was it?
Okay, so there is.
I know. Hold on. I didn't play it. Just to be fair, I didn't play it.
No,
I heard mostly good things.
So Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is one of the biggest controversies in fighting games.
I'm sorry. Marvel vs. Capcom, that's bad. You're right. I was thinking Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Oh, yeah, you're thinking of something completely different.
Yes. So Marvel vs. Capcom, I heard with horse shit. I heard that was like real bad.
So the whole thing is that, again, Capcom was left to their own devices mostly for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, right? And that game turned out pretty good. But at the time, people were not interested in a Marvel vs. Capcom product, and sales show, right? The sales did not really reflect what was supposed to happen, especially since they released another version of the game 9 months after the first one came out with a whole bunch of DLC shit, and it felt like more of a finished product. They basically rushed it in time so it would be at EVO 2011. So the Marvel vs. Capcom, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was a lot better, available at a budget price, but people were kind of stiffed by that, and it shows. It only sold 600,000 copies. But what happened was Capcom lost the license, so they were going to put out a huge patch to rebalance the game. They were going to put out more DLC, but Disney was just like, nope, it's mine now. So you can't even purchase the DLC content anymore. Capcom reacquired the license, put Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on Steam, and announced Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. This is where the interference comes in. Disney interfered so hard to the point where they were not allowed to make new models for the Capcom characters and had to import them from Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which resulted in them being really, really ugly. Not only that, but in all promotional material, Marvel characters had to win. Always win.
Oh, wow.
It was to the point where Disney was practically trying to sabotage the product. I don't know what was going on behind the curtain, but Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was stuck in a development hell because Disney just would not leave them alone, and nobody knows why.
Similar to what happened with Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's just sad because the license, they were just like, by the way, you can't do anything for this game. You can't make new. They couldn't do all the DLC they promised Kickstarter people. Like, they got fucked on that game.
Oh, yeah. It's the developers, publishers need to learn that when they hire a developer for a specific mission, they just need to put out a list of bullet points that they need to do and then let them work. Let them work. Come on. We see this, for example, with God of War. God of War is a game that looks like a big budget game, but feels like a passionate indie game. That's the best. Games like Monster Hunter, for example, like Monster Hunter feels that way, right? Mm-hmm. It feels like a passionate project that was made by people who were just told to make shit. That's what Halo feels like to me. All of these classic games. So publishers just got to lay off. And every time we see it, we see a good product. But that's the AAA industry nowadays. So
yep, unfortunately, that's how it is. If people wanted to check you out on the internet, where would they go do those things?
Okay, so my Twitter, I'll link you that. The other thing is, if you are interested in fighting games or games in general, mostly fighting games though, I do run a Discord community called Mashout. We are getting a collection of Smash players. We also play lots of Tekken as well, so if you're interested in those games, go for it. So you have Silverstone's YouTube channel already, probably YouTube and Twitch, which is important because we are actually working on a project. We're going to be naming the top 25 games of the decade, which is going to be a 2-part series of videos uploaded to YouTube, most likely broadcasted on Twitch. I also have a YouTube channel as well, but I don't really use it for anything. Twitter is where I'm most active, if you want my opinions about games and politics.
And what is your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is CRCalkos, C-A-L-K-O-S.
Perfect. And, of course, I'll have links in the show notes for everybody if they do want to check out any of those cool things. So, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing all your stories, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast. This was great.
Thanks, man.
Hey, you're welcome.
All right, and again, thank you, CRCalkos, for being on the show. Guys, in the show notes, I will have links for his Twitter, his Discord, his YouTube channel. So if you guys want to check him out on any of the platforms there, feel free to do so. Again, if you guys want to be on the show just like he was, send me a tweet at MitchPower1116 on Twitter, or at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast on Twitter. Guys, I really do want to appreciate you guys' support still, even though that I did switch it from a weekly to a monthly show. You guys are still stuck around. You guys are still listening. You guys are still, keeping up with the shows, and I really, really, appreciate that support, guys. As far as it goes, I also, if you guys do like my content specifically, I do now stream on Twitch and Mixer, so you can feel free to follow me there at twitch.tv/MitchPower1116 or Mixer/MitchPower1116. So if you guys particularly like the things that I'm doing, you can go there as well and support that. So thank you guys so much for listening every week. Don't forget to share it with friends, review it well on iTunes, whatever you guys want to do to promote the show. The more people that hear it, the more guests we can have on. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys next month with another new episode. See ya.